Now for my favorite part of the show, money, power, politics. It turns out President Trump's newest threats to raise tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods, it hasn't derailed trade talks, at least not so far. The Chinese negotiators are still coming to D.C. this week, and Robert Lighthizer says these tariffs are going to kick in just after midnight on Friday. That could affect consumers out there. 6,000 products, furniture, clothing, electronics, luggage, dishes, even cereal. So joining me now is CNBC editor-at-large John Harwood and former Senator Bob Torricelli. Still with me. Bob, I want to talk about the president's priorities. We know he loves his base, but he also loves the markets. Deutsche Bank has said these tariffs, if they kick in, they could cost GDP more than 2% over the next 18 months. So you got the markets over here. And at the same time, Steve Bannon, who's no longer in the White House, so he can't knock on the Oval Office door, but he got his way inside last night. He went on TV with Lou Dobbs. He knows the president is watching. And there, he praised the president. He did it in an op-ed today, saying what a great idea it is. It's great for the American worker, you know, the heart of this country. So what matters more to the president? Politics and his base, or the beautiful market where he's gotten so many more supporters?
Well, I thought that the reaction of the markets yesterday, and apparently again this morning, was enormously important to bolstering the president and keeping him on this course. Had there been a severe market reaction, we all know how he uses this as a guidepost on his presidency, and is incredibly responsive to it. The fact that there was a relatively tepid response yesterday, I thought had enormous significance. Also, I thought Chuck Schumer...
Hold on a second. The fact that the market didn't go down more, you're saying, is the market saying, you know what, Mr. President, we like that you're taking this head on. We'll give you some leeway?
Or they're not taking seriously there's actually going to be a 25% tariff, which is probably the case. In any case, with the Chinese delegation arriving, he now has two arrows in his quiver. Chuck Schumer tweets this morning, stick to your guns. That gives him enormous partisan cover. And second, the markets, of which he is extremely responsive to and afraid of, had this tepid response. I think that allows him to go in with a 3% GDP growth, full employment with the United States, the best economy in the Western world, in a very strong position vis-a-vis his Chinese counterparts.
Okay, but the fact that the president, politically, people might like that he's taking China on and hitting them where it hurts. Economists would say he also doesn't even understand the way trade works. John, the president keeps arguing about the deficit, forgetting that when we're spending billions of dollars and paying the Chinese, in return, they're sending billions of dollars worth of goods that we do not produce here and goods that we actually want.
Right. When I laid out the money for the shoes I'm wearing today, it's not that I lost the money. I got some shoes, and that's the.
I'm glad you're not barefoot. Thanks.
Yeah, and that's the situation with our trade deficit. He keeps talking about the amount we spend on Chinese goods is money we've lost. Of course, it isn't. And the consequences of the tariffs, and I agree with Senator Torricelli, the fact that the market tempered its reaction yesterday suggested to me they didn't take seriously the tariff threats. But if he does follow through, I think there will be a market reaction, and there will also be an impact on the American consumer, because it's not the Chinese government paying to the American government when we levy tariffs. It's the American consumer paying for those tariffs. And that's what I think the president ultimately, as he gets closer to his reelection year, is going to want to shy away from.
But thus far, John, does it feel like the American consumer, we know washing machines, for example, people who needed to buy a new one felt a hit. Across the board, have people really felt these tariffs? And will the next round, given that it hits things like clothes and electronics, are people going to feel it and not be happy about it?
Well, it's difficult for people to tell about the impact of different things on their daily lives. Most Americans got a tax cut in 2018. Small tax cut for a lot of people, but nevertheless a tax cut. And a majority of them don't think they did. So in terms of the impact of the tariffs, if we've got an economy that's strong and the job market is strong, inflation is still relatively low, people may not notice unless they're buying a new washing machine, for example. So it's always difficult for American voters to sort particular effects of particular policies. But over the long run, the macro effect is going to be that tariffs that slow down trade, that interrupt supply chains, tariffs are going to negatively impact the American economy and the American consumer.
So let me tell you why, all respect to John, I disagree with all that.
Sock it to me.
First, John, it's nice you traded dollars for your shoes. Your shoes may last a couple of years, particularly if they're Chinese made. Those dollars are forever. There's now more American currency out of the United States than in the United States. We've been playing this game for 50 years of trading little green pieces of paper for products that have limited life. Someday.
Well, we don't make those products here, Bob.
Some we do, some we don't. Many of these 6,000 products are now made in other products. If you're running an American corporation today and you are 100% on Chinese supply chain, and it exists in Vietnam or Malaysia or India, and you haven't diversified your chain of supply, you're practicing corporate malpractice, in my opinion. The larger point is, this game of trading little green pieces of paper for products endlessly, someday that's up. That money is going to be repatriated. Buying American assets, requiring American work, buying American companies. This problem cannot go on forever. This has got to get solved.
It's one of the reasons we sit in the income inequality divide that we're in. Quickly, before we go, we had all mentioned sort of the market had a tepid reaction to what the president did or his threats, maybe implying that we don't think he's actually going to impose these new tariffs. Is that it? Or is it that ultimately this helps the president's big goal, which the market also likes, to get Jay Powell in a corner so he cannot raise rates? Because if the president imposes the tariffs, if we do see a global slowdown, which many economists say we will, that will put Jay Powell in a corner. When he looks at the global economy, he might say, you know what, things look good, but I can't raise rates. And we know under no circumstances does the president want a rate hike. He wanted to get two people on the Fed. He couldn't. He is focused on getting a cut. And if not a cut, at least leave rates where they are. Does this help him do that?
That would suggest that Donald Trump is playing three-dimensional chess or thinking ahead multiple steps. I've never seen any evidence of that. I think this is much, much simpler. He's going to go in an election saying he was defending the American worker, standing up to foreign interests. Being for the American worker is not getting pizza in Scranton, and all of the deference to my friend Joe Biden. It is whether or not you understand the declining standard of living.
Joe Biden just started running. He's not the sitting president. To say all Joe Biden is doing is getting pizza in Scranton is shortchanging him.
Stephanie, he is saying that China is not an economic competitor of the United States or continuing to defend NAFTA. I have never in my life quoted Donald Trump, so this will be the first and the last time. But his saying to the American political establishment, watching the China and Mexican trade deficits, what have you guys been doing the last 20 years? Where were you? How did we ever get in this deep a hole? You know what? That has merits. How did we ever let it get this far? We didn't enforce NAFTA. NAFTA was a good idea. It was a good treaty. We didn't enforce it. Having China in the World Trade Organization was the right thing to do. But letting them abuse the rules all these years, now getting to this level, you suggested yourself, where we actually have a dependency upon them for products, was wrong. That's what Donald Trump's doing. He's setting up the 2020 election to make that case. And we as Democrats better be prepared to make it better.
You know what else had merit? TPP, and he tore it up.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.